Sanj Surati Talks. It's really wonderful that you guys are following us on this journey. We've been speaking to some really interesting people. I've got someone really cool that I want to introduce you to, but just a couple of things before we move forward. Those of you that are like purchasing merchandise, I'm really happy about that. Thank you so much for buying your shirts. Those of you that are sharing, Sanj Surati Talks as a hashtag, I really appreciate that. All of the support we've been getting from you guys is great. It really proves that we're giving value to you guys, the listeners. All right, I'm going to start off introducing this guy. I've actually known this guy for about almost 20 years, which is crazy. When we first met was when I was at Music Week back in 2007. This gentleman has got so much to talk about. He's had a very colourful professional life, and I'm really happy to get him on this podcast. I know you guys listening are going to get a really in-depth kind of perspective on what this person works on. Please welcome to the stage the wonderful, the very generous founder and managing director of Talent and Brands, the wonderful Raf McDonnell.
I think that's the only time I've ever been introduced as somebody who's really cool, because I'm definitely not cool.
You are,
but
so
my kids would die at the thought of that their dad would, and they're not kids anymore, they're grown up. But yeah, I'm definitely not cool. I've done some cool stuff, but I think you're definitely a lot cooler.
Oh, appreciate you. There's a symbiosis here with regards to respect, and I really appreciate that. So look, Raf, there's going to be some people that are listening to this podcast that don't know you. Give us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I started my career decades ago. I don't want to say how many decades, but that will age me very badly. Working in FMCG marketing. So I started in beer, went as a graduate trainee to Courage, which owned Foster's Lager, and became the assistant brand manager for Foster's, working on TV campaigns. And then was 3 years at Courage working in the beer industry, and moved to PepsiCo, which was Walker's Crisps, again in marketing. And then I did sales and marketing roles there. But my most favoured roles, I was brand manager Monster Munch, which I think is still the coolest. That is the cool job.
Yeah.
Brand manager Monster Munch is cool. I'm not cool, but that job was cool. And then I went on to do some sales roles there, and then back into marketing. I was marketing manager for Walker's Crisps. So I did beer, then crisps, and then I moved to Coca-Cola, which I think we probably spoke when I was at Coca-Cola at some point. But I was head of marketing activation in Coke in the UK, running all of the marketing activation groups. So everything from sponsorships and PR activations through to campaigns with brands from Coke to Fanta to Sprite and Powerade and brands like that. And then really that's where my first bit of crossover into the music industry came properly. I'll go back actually in a minute to say where it really started, but I started Coke's music strategy in about 2000. Coke didn't have a music strategy. Pepsi were all over music in a big way, spending with artists from Michael Jackson to Elton John, and spending massively on sport with Beckham and all the football stars. And I felt we needed a music strategy to appeal to youth. So I wrote a music strategy for Coke, which culminated in us eventually doing a music promotion with a Sun newspaper called Music for You. You probably don't remember that. And then the next stage of that, we said we've got to do something a bit more meaningful. So downloadable music was just appearing in the US. Apple had launched in the US. Napster was in the US. There were no downloadable music sites in the UK. And I said, what if Coke launched the first downloadable music business in Europe? So we did. So My Coke Music was born in about 2000, and I'm going to get this wrong, 2003, 2004 maybe.
Right.
6 months before Apple entered Europe. So Apple didn't exist. So iTunes, Apple Music wasn't a thing back then. And we built up quite a big subscriber base of consumers using My Coke Music. So that got me working closely with the labels, working with the music industry. And then from there, I left Coke and, cutting a little long story short, ended up at EMI Music in the music industry.
Wow. Rest in peace, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's still, as a label, it still exists as EMI Music within Universal. But you're right, the EMI Music company was sort of broken up effectively and sold to Warner and Universal in different pieces. So
amazing. And then, so what led you to set up Talent and Brands?
So from EMI, I went to CAA as EMI was getting broken up, and CAA, people might not know, is the world's biggest agency representing all the biggest actors, musicians, sports people in the world. And I was doing deals with the likes of One Direction, Ariana Grande, Kylie Minogue, and all the talent off X Factor and Britain's Got Talent. And what I'd found throughout my career, and I'll take you back now to back at Walker's Crisps, where I worked with the Spice Girls, with Gary Lineker, with Michael Owen. What I found as a brand, it was always very difficult working with talent for brand people, because brand people didn't quite understand the needs of the talent. And it was like two different languages were being used.
Yeah.
So the talent and their teams and their entourage have a certain way of operating, a certain way of working, and brands think about their brand strategy and their brand plans and have a certain way of working. And there was a real sort of pressure point in the middle.
Yep.
So I found that even through EMI and CAA, and always felt if I was a brand, how would I want this area to be managed for me? I want people who are professional, who understand brands, but who also understand how to get the best out of talent. So that was the vision really for talent and brands. When I left CAA actually to join Amazon Tickets, and we were trying to build a tickets business in the UK.
Wow.
And it didn't get going in the US, so it got closed down. So from that, I had a sort of moment, which is I really want to work in the area that I felt I've got these skills, which is managing and brokering celebrity talent deals, both from the music industry and other celebrities. And I felt that brands sort of deserved better and talent deserves better. So I tried to put myself in the middle to try and work those opportunities in the best way, both for the celebrity talent where required, but also for brands, so that I could help them navigate what's quite a difficult area to operate.
Absolutely. And like you've been in that space a long time. I've kind of been around that space a long time. And what I've noticed is the art form of getting that or brokering that partnership is so hard. It hasn't changed. There's always been, and when I say it hasn't changed, there's always been focus on it. Like this, there's a future there, but it feels like not many people have really cracked that art form. So talk to us about that art form. Why do you think it's actually a very hard task?
So I think you've got two different parties coming at it from a different place. So the brand is trying to leverage value from the talent or the celebrity, trying to borrow equity from them effectively, right? Because you don't need the talent unless you've already got what you're looking for. So you're looking for them to add something to the equation. And then from the talent's point of view, they're looking for two things: financial value, number one, and also marketing value, number two. Now, the two are not inseparable. You can't sort of come to a talent and say, oh, we're just going to give you loads of marketing value, but we're not going to pay you, because they are a talent, they're a business, and they need to justify why they should spend time and effort on your project versus other ways that they could spend their time to get paid by either other brands or other forms of revenue, and either a music artist performing corporate gigs or whatever it might be. So understanding that interdependence between what the brand needs and what the talent need is really difficult. Loads of people have been brand side.
Yeah.
Loads of people have been talent side. There's actually very few people, and especially in this market in the UK, who've actually worked brand and talent and agency side. There's sort of three parts of that equation. There's literally a handful. In the US, it's a much more developed market. You've got big agencies doing this, big brokering agencies. You can go direct to the agents a lot easier in the US because they're the sort of 80-ton gorilla, whatever you call it, 80-pound gorilla, 80 ton? I can't remember what the phrase is, 8-ton, whatever. But they're big Goliaths in that industry. Whereas I think here, the budgets are smaller. Brands don't know where to turn. So if you're a brand and you want to get a celebrity to work for your campaign, unless you've got established people around you and big agencies and that know what they're doing, it's generally quite a scary place. Mm-hmm. And a lot of brands have been burnt. You know, they can all tell you a story about how they did a deal with this celebrity who didn't turn up, or the contract deliverables weren't adhered to, or they had a fight over payments, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of friction in the celebrity talent world. So I think my role in that is to take away the friction and the pain points so that you get the best deal for both parties. So that the brand comes away going, we got an amazing deal. not just financial, the talent went over and above. They loved our product. They use it organically now. They're part of the equation when they're always talking about our product. If you go back to the Lineker days of Walker's Crisps, Gary Lineker was the epitome of a brand endorsement. He came from Leicester, where the Walker's Crisps factory was. He played for Leicester. He had that connection to the brand, and he was a genuine advocate of Walker's Crisps and has been for many years. And then on the talent side, like doing the best for the talent so that they are not being ripped off, that they're not being asked for too much, that they're not being badly treated by the brand and the production process. And I think having people who have an inherent understanding of talent's needs really helps. So, I've worked with lots of celebrity talent, like I said, from the One Directions of the world at the top of their game when they were the biggest artists in the world, through to emerging talent off shows like Britain's Got Talent or The X Factor. And now, over the last 4 years, I started managing creator talent. I never wanted to be in management. I always wanted to be the broker. Yeah. And now I've started managing talent. And what's really interesting from having that management perspective is just having that different nuance of how talent's needs can be met better by the campaigns and by the brands and by the agencies. So it's a really difficult space to operate in effectively. And I think you referenced it. It's been happening for years, but I don't think there's been that much good practice.
No.
It's all a bit shady deals. It's all a bit who you know. And I think, again, brands deserve better than that. There should be a more professional approach to that so that you know what you're getting, you're getting value for money, and that the process won't let you down. Because the worst thing is when something goes wrong, which inevitably with talent, things do go wrong. And having then the best team around you who know how to solve when something goes wrong, how to call favors, who can pick up the phone. That's the relationships bit. That's the soft bit that people don't realize. Like literally anyone could do a brand deal. Right? Anyone could say, oh, I know somebody, I'll do a deal. They can't, but a lot of people think they can. When it really comes to the crunch, managing when things go wrong is actually when you realize whether you've got the right people around you.
Right. So you touched on two very sort of key aspects of this partnership that you're brokering. The first one was like, you mentioned quite a few challenges, and the second thing was responsibility to the artist. We'll talk about responsibility in a second. Just with regards to the challenges, and you touched on quite a few of them, what's the first challenge you have to preempt when you're working with a new artist and a new brand and you're trying to broker that deal?
So it all starts for me with the brand. What's the brand's objective? What's the brand's audience? And what are they trying to achieve through hiring a talent or a celebrity or creator, whatever it might be? So when you've got that, then from a talent point of view, you can look at, is there a good brand fit? So brand fit is really important, right? So I look at three sort of variables. I talk about brand fit, availability, and price. So in an ideal world, if you get all three of those things right, so it's a brand the talent likes, the money's right, and they're available. And by available, I don't just mean on a date. I mean, they are available in the category. It's a category they want to work in. They are predisposed to working with you on it. Yeah. So if you get those three things right, you've got a deal. Rarely do you get all three, right? So people come with lots of money, bad brand fit. Good brand fit, not so much money. Availability, I've already got a contract I can't get out of that in that category, so I can't work in it. So it's managing those three variables to get the right brand deal for the talent and the right talent for the brand. Now, I think in general, if you ask talent, which brands do I want to work with? They go, great. And they list off all the top luxury designer brands, which is great. But guess what? You're not always going to get those brands coming to your door. You're going to get high street fashion or supermarket fashion or whatever. So it's balancing the need for what's the brand going to do for me, either commercially or from a marketing point of view, which we talked about earlier. You know, those are the two things that any artist or talent is going to get out of a deal. And sometimes the commercial value is going to be bigger and the marketing value is going to be smaller, but there are times when the talent may want the marketing value. So if you're an artist and you're trying to sell your tour or promote a new album or whatever it might be, then maybe the marketing value is more important to you at that point than the cash. There might be other times when the cash is just as important because you may have a big tax bill to pay or whatever it might be. So it's just understanding those nuances, just as I talk it through, I understand sort of one of the questions you asked earlier, because you know these nuances of why at different times in a different talent's life, these things are more important to them, enables you to get the best deal, to find the right talent at the right time, at the right price for the right brand.
Thank you for that. Let's touch on the responsibility, because you kind of touched on it on that last answer, actually. But you're working with these new artists, or an artist that's been around for a long time. Some of these artists have been burnt before, as you mentioned. How do you nurture trust between you and the brand? You and the artist.
So, from brokering the deal on behalf of the artist, they need people around them that understand brands. I think that's really important. So they're surrounded by lots of people, especially in the music industry. You've got everyone from publishers to managers to the live agents and all sorts of different stakeholders who can be involved in brand deals. But ultimately, what I think the talent's looking for is somebody who understands the brands and can bring the partnership to life for them in a way that's going to match their values as an artist. So I think of artists as brands or talent as brands, which is why I call the company Talent and Brands, because they're the words that are key. And the talent are brands in their own right. They have their own marketing plans, they have their own audience, and so everything you do has to respect their need as a brand, not just, here's a telecom brand or phone brand that's going to pay you $3 million to be in an ad and do X, Y, and Z. You have to respect the talent's needs as a brand and what their strategy is and what they're trying to achieve for their consumers. Of course, there are times when talent will sell out and take the money, but I think my role in that is to make sure that isn't the case, because I think any deal that looks like the talent have just taken the money and sold out will immediately get sniffed out by their followers, fans and consumers. Especially in today's world, what has changed is that very quickly on TikTok or Instagram, your followers will tell you if they smell a rat. If you've sold out, your fans will be the first people to call that out on you.
Right.
And that's the difference now, that therefore partnerships need to be more authentic. And if they're not authentic, just be honest about it, and I think sometimes there are talent who embrace that. Can't think off the top of my head, but I don't know, look at George Clooney and Nespresso. It's like, well, George is acting out this character for Nespresso, and I think people get it. He gets paid a lot of money to drink Nespresso. Who knows whether that's his drink of choice or not, but there's an acceptance that he's doing that and getting paid for it.
Yep.
But if you went out there to try and pretend to be authentic and then got found out, that's different. I mean, back in my Coca-Cola days, we always used to laugh that Britney Spears was paid millions of dollars to be Pepsi's ambassador, and she was always photographed with a can of Coke. Yeah. It was one of the funniest jokes, and that level of authenticity in today's world with social media would get called out a lot more quickly. We used to see it in a newspaper article, and that didn't really do much. But now, if you were in a campaign for a brand and you weren't authentic and you were seen drinking or using a competitor's brand, I think that would go viral pretty quickly.
Amazing. Well, look, so let's talk about some of those projects that you worked on, if that's cool. And please, just if we need to kind of cut off anywhere with regards to the confidentiality of the project, that's fine. So you worked on the Gary Lineker Walkers project.
Yeah. So the Walkers campaign was, not my creation. It was started many years while I was still on Monster Munch. I think the Walkers marketing team created the Lineker campaign, but I worked, when I then moved into the Walkers Crisps role, I worked on a couple of campaigns with Lineker. I think the last one I did was with the Looney Tunes, which was exciting, where he acted alongside Bugs Bunny and the Looney Tunes characters. And we created some animation with it. So
let's talk about that, because that's a very culturally relevant campaign that's been around for a long time. It's it's over 30 years, right?
It will be 30 years this year. I think 1995 when it first launched, and is still the longest running celebrity endorsement in UK advertising history.
Wow. So how do you feel about it? Because I think has it come to an end officially, or?
I think I'm not 100% sure. I think Lineker is still involved, but you don't see him in the TV ads anymore. I think a few years ago they started sort of moving to a different strategy, but he was an incredible embodiment of the brand. The whole idea was built, and again, not something I developed, but the idea was built on this no more Mr. Nice Guy idea, that he'd never been booked. So Lineker's whole career had never been booked.
Wow.
So the idea of him being such a nice guy, but actually stealing the crisps from the little kid was the whole idea in that. And also there was the Leicester connection, the fact he was in Japan at the time, was coming back to the UK, so it was Welcome Home was the campaign. Right. So it just captured the imagination of the public, and then ran for 30 years with executions involving the Spice Girls, Ulrika Johnson, Michael Owen, Gascoigne, I remember that, where he was crying at Euro 96, and they did a campaign with Salt and Lineker for that, and then Cheese and Owen came off the back of that as a campaign. So that campaign evolved through many years, and was probably my first, so I guess that was my first introduction to the world of celebrity and brand when I was on the brand side, and then worked with the Spice Girls for a bit on a campaign we did, and that sort of got me into that area again. So it's interesting now looking back, even though I didn't know it at the time, that those were probably the little seeds of, I think there's something, I'm interested in this area, I like this area, wouldn't it be great to work in this area in the future? And then a few decades later, I'm working with celebrity talent on the other side of the fence, brokering the deals for the talent and with the talent as an agent.
Awesome. And then, so with regards to like talent and brands, what's the longest partnership you've brokered between a talent and a brand?
I guess I'm trying to think. Most of them are short-term partnerships, and usually they're around a specific launch or a campaign. There are some license deals that we've done over the last few years with beauty brands, which go more into that long-term partnership. But in general, they tend to be like one-off campaigns. So there is something I've just closed right now, but I can't talk about. But there are some campaigns that, with licensed opportunities, sort of run for 2 or 3 years, which is a bit longer. With talent, they just take a lot longer to put together. But often brands are looking for specific support for a campaign idea that they need the talent for, be it an event launch, a product launch, an advertising campaign, a PR launch, something like that.
Amazing. So let's talk about, let's go back into your past a little bit more. You were at EMI Records. How long were you there for? What was that like? Do you miss it?
So I still miss that era. It was probably one of the best jobs I ever did, if I'm honest, in terms of the fun, the excitement, what we were creating. So just to set the context, back in 2008, the labels were just toying with this idea of brand partnerships, but not fully. I think Universal were doing had a bit of a team. And I was hired in to run, so I was senior vice president for Europe and rest of the world. So everywhere outside the States, that means that's how the record industry talks about rest of the world, everywhere outside the US. And it was for 3 areas: brand partnerships, licensing, and synchronization. And sync, I don't know, people might not know, but sync licensing is putting music in films and ads and games. So licensing music to the entertainment industry. So I was running those 3 divisions, but the main reason that I was brought in, and I think they used a great headline in The Guardian or something like, EMI hires ex-Coke guy to put some pop or some fizz into the pop or some.
I remember that article.
Some pun like that.
We had you when I was at Music Week. We did a conference, a day conference, and you spoke on it. And it was right back when O2 had just done the deal with the Millennium Stadium. And I remember you were speaking about that's where we first met.
I can't quite remember. It was like something like EMI adds fizz to its pop or something that by hiring. It was very classic Coke pop. So I'm trying to remember where we were with that now. So when I joined EMI, the main reason I was brought in was to really start from scratch this brand partnerships business. And EMI had dabbled in it a little bit, but it was mostly cover mounts for newspapers and stuff like that. So we started from scratch, and I built a team in the UK and then in Europe in each of the EMI country divisions to focus on how to develop brand partnerships. And it was starting with the artist first. So and then working out what brands wanted and being able to get brands to come to EMI when they wanted a solution. That was how we thought about it. Whereas in the past, it was very much a artist out strategy, which is, we've got Kylie Minogue, she's got a tour, can we get some brand partners? And I stopped that and said, no. So we need to go to brands, understand what they want, and then we can say, oh, and Kylie's tour might be a solution, or working with Tiny Temper might be a solution, or so a solutions-based approach to partnerships. And it took a little while for the music industry to get that. So I had to restructure how we worked with the artists and managers. So up until then, the relationship with the artist and the manager had been managed by artist relations, the A&R guys, the marketing label teams. We said, well, we can't advocate on behalf of the artists and work with brands unless we're talking to the manager and the artist directly. Yeah. So we started building those relationships with the likes of, Robbie Williams' management, Kylie's management, but then the new artists. And I think that's where we proved this model more so than with the big. It's easier in a way to go and get deals for Kylie and Robbie, or Coldplay, or Swedish House Mafia. But when you had artists like Tiny Temper, Eliza Doolittle, and Professor Green, that were all new artists, and we started creating partnerships. So, with Tiny, we did the big BlackBerry partnership with him and MasterCard, and with Eliza Doolittle working with MasterCard and the likes of Max Factor, and Professor Green with Puma and BlackBerry and Rockstar, no, not Rockstar, Monster Energy. I can't remember which energy drink back then. But showing them that brands could access these young up-and-coming talent and really make a difference to their careers, and that we could generate significant revenue for the talent from this, but marketing. So, the marketing campaigns 100% helped the likes of Eliza Doolittle, Professor Green, and Tiny Temper to elevate the product they were putting out from a music point of view, to get more reach, more exposure. And yes, it financially was good for them, but it was just as much about the marketing and what it did for them. So setting up that brand partnerships business was a different business model. And then we rolled it out around Europe and the rest of the world, and rolled out that best practice. And then, even that best practice sort of got adopted by the US team in terms of how we should operate.
Was it a challenge?
Yeah, well, I remember going into EMI on my first sort of day, and I was, the guy from Coke that probably, wore too smart a jacket and too nice a shirt, and didn't have the right colour jeans or whatever, and turned up to meetings with a PowerPoint and stuff like that. And I was very conscious of not being that guy. So, but what we had to do was prove that it worked. Yeah. And, what quickly happened was that the heads of the labels and the heads of the A&R, started going, wow, I see what you're doing for Tiny Temper. Can you do the same for Emily Sandé, who was, again, an emerging artist at that time, and we did. And then the feedback they would get from the talent was, this is really good. We've never had this sort of service from our record label, so we want more of that. And then suddenly, we had the bigger talents management going, well, we want some of that as well. And, I remember sort of working with Kylie's manager at the time, and he was like, yeah, you've now proved what you guys can do. We'd like you to go and get partners for Kylie's tour. Can you help us with that? And building those relationships from a trust point of view, where we knew what we were doing, and we had to a certain extent, prove our worth so that it wouldn't go through the marketing managers, the A&R guys. I do remember one funny moment, which I'll give you, which is when Tiny Temper came in. So he was just, I think he probably had his number one hit with Pass Out. So he was a big star at this point.
Great song.
He was about to win 2 Brit Awards. The first black guy to win 2 Brit Awards, I think, was the sort of accolade. And he came into my office to meet with me to talk about brands with his manager, Doomy, who was a great manager of Tiny at the time. And we were sat in my office chatting away, and I think A&R, the artist relation team, were having a meltdown because they knew he was in the office somewhere but couldn't find him, because normally he'd only ever be on the 4th floor, which is where A&R and creative would be, not down on the 3rd floor where the commercial sales guys were and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, eventually they realised he was with us, which was fine. But I still remember that moment when Tiny was under the desk while we were chatting. And again, this was part of the building relationship, actually meeting with the artist and talking about what they wanted and their strategy. He was under the desk while he was chatting to me, just with which I thought it was his phone, and it was a BlackBerry. I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm BBMing." And at the time, not many people knew what BBM was, but I had 3 teenage kids who were all about BBM. I said, "Oh, BBM, really? We're talking to BlackBerry right now about a campaign." So from that little insight with Tiny, we developed a very, 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 very big campaign with BlackBerry, and that was a big long-term ambassadorship off the back of a BBM under the desk that he was doing. I think this is authentic. He's BBMing while he should be in a meeting with me.
That's awesome. So how big was your team when you left EMI?
So I think from memory, there was about, across all of the different countries, about 40 people. Yeah. From Australia, New Zealand to France, Spain, Italy, Belgium.
Amazing.
And then the UK team was the biggest part of that, probably 25 people in the UK team.
So how big is your team now at Talent and Brands?
Not very big. So I started the business 8 years ago,
Right.
7 years ago. And it was just me working with some selected talent and broker and brand deals. And what's changed in 2023, we got acquired by Atomic, advertising agency, to try and help scale Talent and Brands, but also to set up a social agency. So I also co-founded and run Supernova, which is a social media creative agency. So we work with brands on their social strategy. So the core Talent and Brands team is actually 3 people. So we work on the talent brokering and the talent management side, working with creators from, I don't know if you've ever heard of Rob Mayhew, who's a sort of business industry creator, comedian, through to Chip Shop Diva, who you might have seen hundreds of millions of views of her videos serving in a chip shop in Bewdley, and lots of different creators from fashion and lifestyle to art and comedy and business. So we've got that management side, and then we also work with talent on their brand partnerships, but mostly brands coming to us looking for solutions.
Amazing. And so how do you function that mentally? That's a lot of different, I guess, energies that you're dealing with.
I have taken a different view on this over the last few years, which is I think you should stick in your lane. That sounds really weird, but I find that if you're good at something, stick at what you're good at. So I've started to refocus my energy at the thing that I think I'm best at. And for me, that's creating these celebrity partnerships, which I've got, as you said, a lot of experience of, and insight and knowledge, and I've worked in that space for a long time. So I have, earned my stripes in that area. But now on the talent management side, what excites me is just managing and finding new talent. So when we found Chip Shop Diva, it was really exciting. It's like having a whole new product to play with. It's like, oh my God, this person could be amazing. And the same with Rob Mayhew. When I started managing him, he wasn't that well known in the industry, and now he's one of the premier creators in the business category. In Cannes Lion a few weeks ago, he was working with the likes of Spotify, Nissan, the Uncensored CMO podcast, and lots of other brands. And it was interesting being in Cannes, which is obviously a marketing and advertising festival, with somebody like Rob Mayhew. It reminded me of my days working with music talent, being in Madrid with The Wanted and having hundreds of screaming girls trying to get to them at the concert. And actually, in a way, Rob in Cannes was a bit like that. So many of his followers and fans love his content, and to them, he was a rock star at Cannes Lion. So it just did take me back a bit. And I had a pinch me moment where there's a poster at the Spotify Beach event in Cannes where it has Louis Theroux, Paris Hilton, some other famous names, I think Mark Ronson, I think, and then it says Rob Mayhew, and then it has Seal next to it. And Seal's one of Rob's favourite artists, and he was on the same poster as Seal. He got to meet Seal. And I guess it just crept up on me that because I never planned to get into management, I suddenly looked at this poster and thought, one of the talent I manage is on this poster. And it was a real sort of surreal moment where I sort of thought, how did that happen when it was never something I meant to get into? And it only happened really by accident just after lockdown. So the celebrity business after lockdown was really tough. Brands weren't spending, celebrities were stuck at home. And my daughter had a friend who was blown up on TikTok, to use her words, to which I said, "What's TikTok?" And I didn't have it on my phone. I knew what it was, obviously, but I didn't have it on my phone. She said, "No, she's doing really well." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Oh, she's got 300,000 followers." I was like, "Wow." And some of the celebrities I was working with back then had less than 100,000 followers. So I was thinking, that's a huge number for a young 18-year-old girl that does hair and beauty videos. So I said I'd meet with her, try to help her. I wasn't planning to manage her at all. This was just that I'll help this girl who used to come around our house and was friends with my daughter. And immediately, as soon as I started speaking to her about what she did, the light bulb went off in my head. I realized this is a new economy. This is going to be a massive change in the industry. When an 18-year-old girl can literally from her room at home create content with a ring light and a phone that reaches millions of followers, this is going to change everything. So I, instead of just giving her some advice, I said, well, why don't I actually just start managing you to help you as a favor? It was never a strategy. I wasn't going to build a management company. Then she introduced me to a friend of hers that wanted to leave their management. I said, look, I'll help you as well. Started working with her. So I got the first girl I worked with up to 1.7 million followers, which was amazing. Wow. Worked with her friend, got her followers up, making them both significant amounts of money from being a creator. Then I met one of my clients at a wedding, a family wedding, and somebody said, "Oh, don't you manage a couple of TikTokers? And one of the ladies here, she's a TikToker. You should talk." And we were like, "Well, okay." And we didn't really want to talk, but we decided to have a call after the wedding. I signed her, and then really the fourth signing was actually Rob Mayhew, which was fascinating. So again, at this point, I didn't have ambition to set up a management company. This all happened by accident, and somehow the universe sort of gave me the skills to be able to do it. But then Rob put something out on LinkedIn saying, "This is getting serious. I think I might need an agent." And I wasn't following him, but here's where the MI connection comes in. One of my guys that worked for me running the brand partnerships for me in Australia and New Zealand followed him. A guy that I'd worked with at Coke followed him and had worked with him. And they both independently messaged him and me saying, you should speak to Raf, because they knew what I was doing in this space. So Rob and I met up, had a chat. Lots of people were starting to get an interest in him, but he got the fact that I was coming at it from a commercial point of view, understood brands, and that's what he wanted. He didn't just want an influencer agency to manage him. He wanted somebody who understood the business world. So that fourth signing, Rob, changed everything. Suddenly people were saying, well, but you manage this guy and he's amazing. And it just took off. And now I think we manage somewhere, I can't remember exactly, but about 20 creators.
Wow.
So yeah, that's from an accidental, will you manage my friend conversation with my daughter. And yeah, I do probably owe her a bit of something for that.
Well, you made her, so.
Yeah, that's true. And well, she helped. She does remind me about it every now and then. She says, if it wasn't for me, Dad, you might have had to sell the house. And, so, she just gives me that. But,
Raf, I could speak to you forever, but we're just running out of time. So I've just got a few quick questions. First one, quite an important one. How do you manage your mental health? How do you look after your mind?
So I've always had a very positive disposition. I come to work to enjoy what I do and help people. And I think that helps. If you come to work with that mindset, really helps. Something I've been doing recently, which is I've started watching comedy on the train on the way in. Laughter is such a good medicine. I've been watching Friday Night Dinner again. I remember the first series. I've watched it on the tube coming in. It sets you up really well. Like watching some Jimmy Carr videos on the way in, it's a really good way to do it. But the other thing is I still do a lot of sport to keep myself healthy. Yeah. I also, from my whole career, I've always tried to have a very healthy work-life balance. My kids were very important to me in all my jobs, and making sure I got back to parents' evenings, spend time with them, get back before they went to bed, and be involved in their lives, regardless of what job and how important the seniority of that job was. I guess what I found running my own business was that those worlds tended to then collide. So you end up always, if you're a founder of a business, you're always on all the time, 7 days a week. Yeah. So that's been interesting, but that's also coincided with my children being a lot older now, so it's not the same. I don't have to be there. They're staying out to all hours of the night, so it's not as much of a problem. But I think having that healthy mindset still of the fact that work isn't everything, that there is more to life than work, and that work's an important part of what we do, but family and health. And I also have I do have a perspective on life, which is I like to help other people. And that sounds really like worthy in terms of giving back. I do think if you help people, you should do it anyway. But if you help people, generally good things happen.
Absolutely. And you talk about some of these accidents that have happened, they're because you've given and that's come back to you, which is brilliant. 2 more questions. This one's quite an interesting one. What advice would you have given yourself when you started in this industry, knowing what you know now?
So I'm, getting to the later stages of my career, and I genuinely would tell you that I come to work every morning looking forward to what I do. I love it. I love what I do. Mm-hmm. And that's a real privilege because you speak to a lot of people who don't love what they do. I've always admired sportsmen who can, imagine if you love snooker and you can be a snooker player. That's like the dream, isn't it? Yeah. Come to work and do your hobby for work. I don't think I'm at that level of utopia, but I genuinely love what I do. I love helping talent fulfill their potential. Like with Chip Shop Diva, we've turned a young lady who was working in a chip shop and is a student nurse studying into a global phenomenon, working with brands from Pepsi to Burger King to Adidas. I mean, it's amazing. I get joy from that in helping other people achieve what they want. So I would say if you can, follow your passion. That's not an easy thing to do, right? A lot of people have to work in areas that are not their passion. But if you can find, even within those jobs or careers, things that you are passionate about, then you're going to want to come to work and do more and do better every day. So I think that advice is an important one. But also, when I think back to where I started in a graduate trainee job in marketing, who'd have thought I'd ended up doing what I do now in the celebrity world? Careers are a long time, decades, and you can move and pivot and change. And I think just being open to that, who'd have thought 4 years ago, an old guy like me would suddenly want to become a TikTok expert? It's like, that doesn't make sense. But I was open to the idea. I pivoted at the right time and I was open to learning something new. So, having the open mindset to want to learn new things and to see when the opportunities come along, you've got to be in a position to take them. Doesn't mean you have to take them, but put yourself in a position where you could take advantage of new opportunities, because you don't have to stay in an industry or a role. And, I've ended up going from FMCG marketing into sales, back into marketing, into running my own business for a bit, into a music label, into an agent, into Amazon, and then running my own business, and then setting up a social agency and now also managing talent. So what I've done along the way is built all those skill sets to enable me to do those things, but it hasn't just been a single track at all. So I think keep your options open, be flexible, learn, be open to learning, and then you're in a great place when those opportunities do come.
Amazing. That's amazing advice. Really, really good advice there. Last question before we close. I'm sure there's going to be loads of people listening to this who want to get in contact with you. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
So LinkedIn is always good. I'm Raf, Raf McDonnell, McDonnell. You'll find me on LinkedIn, giving advice about creator management and also celebrity partnerships. I've just done a little series of videos I've just put out, started last week, on how to work with celebrities, so you can check that out. So drop me a message, follow me, connect with me on there, and then drop me a message if you'd like to chat.
Awesome. Raf, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. Those of you listening, I hope you got what you wanted from it. I hope you've learned something new. I know I have. Wherever you are, make sure if you're sharing, you're using the social hashtag, all one word, Sanj Surati Talks. We'll see you soon for episode 27. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, please be good.